Here's an excerpt from Fear of Physics by Lawrence Krauss.
A physicist, an engineer, and a psychologist are called in as consultants to a dairy farm whose production has been below par. Each is given time to inspect the details of the operation before making a report. The first to be called is the engineer, who states,
"The size of the stalls for the cattle should be decreased. Efficiency could be improved if the cows were more closely packed, with a net allotment of 275 cubic feet per cow. Also, the diameter of the milking tubes should be increased by 4% to allow for a greater average flow rate during the milking periods."
The next report is the psychologist, who proposes the inside of the barn should be painted green. This is a more mellow color than brown and should help induce greater milk flow. Also, more trees should be planted in the fields to add diversity to the scenery for the cattle during grazing to reduce boredom. Finally, the physicist is called upon. He asks for a blackboard and then draws a circle. He begins.
"Assume the cow is a sphere."
This old joke, if not very funny, does illustrate how, at least metaphorically, physicists picture the world. The set of tools physicists have to describe nature is limited. Most of the modern theories you read about began life as simple models by physicists who didn't know how else to start to solve a problem. These simple little models are usually based on simpler little models, and so on, because the class of things that we do know how to solve exactly can be counted on the fingers of one, maybe two hands. For the most part, physicists follow the same guidelines that have helped keep Hollywood movie producers rich. If it works, exploit it. If it still works, copy it. I like the cow joke because it provides an allegory for thinking simply about the world, and it allows me to jump right into an idea that doesn't get written about too much, but that is essential for the everyday workings of science. Before doing anything else, abstract out all irrelevant details. There are two operatives here, abstract and irrelevant. Getting rid of irrelevant details is the first step in building any model of the world, and we do it subconsciously from the moment we are born. Doing it consciously is another matter. Overcoming the natural desire not to throw out unnecessary information is probably the hardest and most important part of learning physics. In addition, what may be irrelevant in a given situation is not universal, but depends in most cases on what interests you. This leads us to the second operative word, abstraction. Of all the abstract thinking required in physics, probably the most challenging lies in choosing how to approach a problem. The mere description of movement along a straight line, the first major development in modern physics, required enough abstraction that it largely eluded some pretty impressive intellects until Galileo.
Fear of Physics by Lawrence Krauss. Find this audiobook and many more at atheistaudiobooks.com. The facts you won't hear in church. You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show on Secular Media Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are still listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. I have Anthony Magnabosco, and of course, you can check out his stuff on YouTube. Wonderful videos, video after video after video. And we were just talking about an interview segment he did with Ian, who he just happened to have walked by him and said, "Can I talk to you for 5 minutes?" And this college student said, "Yeah, let's talk." And we heard a little bit about that. We were talking about the pauses and how you do that. I guess, we can talk more about that. But I guess one of the things I want to get into is how does someone get started with this stuff?
It's so easy to get started. There is a private Facebook group. If you search for Street Epistemology, there's a public page, private group. There are countless videos on YouTube. There's the streetepistemology.com website. There's Peter Boghossian's book. There's a new app that he's coming out with it's been 2 years in the making. It's been rolled out to New Zealand and Australia, and it will soon be rolled out worldwide. There's no lack of resources available for anyone that wants to learn this. You can go on Blab. You can go on Periscope. There are people doing it there. I've taken to live streaming now. So if you follow me on Twitter, you might get a notification that I'm starting to do some street epistemology right now. So go there and check it out. So there's no barrier to learning this other than just being, like you said before, wanting to do something. And it's so interesting. Like, I think we've actually hit a point now where we've saturated the atheist market on street epistemology. Very few people, this might be new to some people, but more and more people are aware of it, and they're coming up to me. And when I was at the Reason Rally, so many people came up to me and they said, I've watched your videos. You're changing the way I'm having conversations with believers. And the community of people that are doing this are seeing the same thing. They're seeing the power of it. And they say, I'm done arguing with people. I think that this is the best way to go. We're reaching a point now here where I think we're hitting a ceiling. We're getting to the point where we need infrastructure. We need support if we're going to grow this. And I mean, I think we're getting to the point where we need some funding. We need some funding to track deconversions. Nobody's giving out grants for this type of thing, and it's on our own selves to do it. We have all these volunteers that are experimenting it. We've taken Boghossian's ideas, we've put them out in the field. We're seeing that it works. But then what? How do we get to the next phase? How do we break out of the atheist bubble? We need to run into people that can help us get this method, because it's not just for atheists to talk to believers. Anybody can use this approach for any topic, whether it's political or it's about GMOs or the moon landing is a hoax type of thing. There's no lack of conversations that you can't start using this approach.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things I did the best at using this kind of philosophy, several years ago I was at a conference and I had a young libertarian explain to me that we should shut down all the public schools and let private business run it. And I had heard that before at the time, and I said, I honestly have no idea how that could work. Can I buy you a couple drinks and you walk me through it? And he's like, what, really? And I go, yeah. I said, it doesn't seem to make sense to me, but maybe I'm missing something. Let's sit down and let's take our time. And we talked for over an hour. And by the time the conversation was done, as he kept trying to explain how this could work, how that could work, how it might work without the system we have now, he finally got to the point where he said, you know what, this is a bad idea.
Good for you, though, for being open to listening to him. That so many times we just shut the conversation down because it's something that we don't agree with. We don't think it's feasible, and we shut the conversation down, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah,
I'm so impressed that you did that.
I've been guilty of the other many a time. Don't worry.
Me too.
But it's one of those things that he was one of two people that I don't know, in the last 5 or 6 years that flat out acknowledged that they changed their perspective during the conversation. But one of the things that we didn't talk about, and I think it's important, is that you usually ask people how confident they are of their position on a scale of 1 to 100. Mm-hmm. And do people ever change that number while you're talking?
Oh, yeah.
Well, how much change can you get from like 98 to 97?
Very often, if I have a conversation with somebody, I'll try to establish where they are on their certainty that the belief is true in terms of confidence and doubt. So, yes, 100% would be I'm absolutely confident and I have no doubt. 0% would be all I have is doubt. There's no confidence. And then typically a person will put themselves high up on the list depending on what the belief is. Sometimes they say, I'm about 90%, or let's say I'm about 60% sure Jesus exists. Well, that's going to be a slightly different conversation than somebody says, I'm 100% sure, I absolutely know that Jesus exists. So yes, I do like to get an idea of where they are on the scale. Very often we can see movement down the scale. I've been having a lot of conversations. I was chatting with Matt Dillahunty last weekend, and we had this good discussion during lunch where he was of the position that maybe a lot of these people were never really at that high number. Maybe they were always maybe they said that they were 100%, but then they dropped to an 80. Were they really at an 80 from the very start? And I do think that that's the case sometimes. However, I think it's clear when you watch some of these videos, you can see that people are actually lowering their confidence in the belief that they're holding, even during a 5 or 10 minute talk. It's so fascinating to watch.
Well, it's one of those things. Many years ago, I had a habit of this job that I had. I would find out where someone was on the spectrum of belief in Christianity, and I would try to buy them a book that would help them move one step towards the direction I thought they should go. And I found that worked really, really well if they were interested, if they wanted to get some new information. But if someone was having, like, for example, one person was having doubts about creationism being true and that maybe evolution was, and so I'd give them a book from someone who was a Christian that explains why evolution is right, but it doesn't address or attack or insult or whatever their faith, and they could look at it and go, wow, this other really smart Christian says evolution works. Maybe I can too. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like one small step at a time.
Yeah, so many people, it really just comes down to whether a person values truth. So like a lot of the stuff, whether they believe in Jesus or Allah or the moon landing is a hoax, there's a deeper level here. And I'm starting to experiment now, going out and asking some different questions. And I think you'll start seeing that in the future. But I'm starting to ask people, what is their definition of truth? Do they value truth? Do they think other people value truth in the same way that they do? When they go to see the doctor, would they expect that doctor to have the same value of truth that they have, or a slightly higher value of truth? What's on the other side of that equation? If you're 40%, if the value of truth to you is on a 40, for example, then what's making up this other 60%? Sometimes it's comfort. I'm okay going through life believing in something that might not be true because it makes me comfortable. And even just having somebody admit that out loud can help a person re-examine why they value truth to such a low level. And then that informs all those other beliefs that they hold.
Well, it's funny when you talked about this conversation with Matt about someone changing from 100 to 80, were they really 80 in the first place? I don't know that it matters, because what people are willing to express out loud has a high correlation to what they really believe. And if someone says 100, I don't think they're intentionally trying to convince you. They might be trying to convince themselves. And just the very idea that they've gone from 100 to 80, I think, is a big deal. Now, you were talking to Matt. You were at the ACA, Atheist Community of Austin, and you were on the show, I take it?
I gave a presentation on street epistemology last weekend, and then they invited me on the show. I'll be actually releasing the talk that I gave on my YouTube channel in a few days. But yes.
And you were on the entire Sunday show and actually got to talk to a few listeners. And this is one of those things, who knows who's listening to my show? It's not a really big show, but if you're running a conference or organizing an event and you need a speaker, I'm assuming you can go and hang out, give a talk.
Oh, absolutely. Love to.
How do they reach you to do this?
The best way to reach me these days is via Twitter. But people contact me on Facebook and YouTube and my email. But just hit me up on Twitter at Magnabosco.
Magnabosco, Magnabosco, Magnabosco. It spells just like it sounds.
It's got it perfectly there.
Yeah, that's nice. Now, one of the other things I've been trying to figure out where to fit this in, and I think now is the time. Have you ever talked to somebody, whether it went well or not so well, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then they come back and actually want to talk to you more?
Oh, yeah, that happens a lot.
Walk me through an example. How does that work?
Oh, well, I've started ending conversations now by saying, if you happen to spot me again and I'm alone, then please come up to me. Because sometimes I'm deep into a conversation with somebody else, and then a previous person that I've spoken to spots me and interrupts that talk. It seems like they're so excited to want to talk to me again. Generally, almost all the time, when I spot somebody that I've spoken to before, they want to have another talk. They're eager to talk to me again. Some time has passed between the first talk and hopefully the second talk. So they're generally very excited to see me. They will shake my hand or hug me and say, can we pick up the conversation? I've actually started now giving a card with an email address on it so that people can reach me. And I do have a fair amount of people that will say, even 30 minutes after the talk, hey, Anthony, I really enjoyed the talk. I've been thinking about